Welcome to this month's Fire Chiefs video message. It is July, the dog days of summer are upon us. The temperature outside has already approached 100 degrees last week. It'll be getting to that point in the next couple of days. We're forecasted for the next 10 days to be almost all of those days up in 90s, approaching 100 degrees. We've talked about it here before. Come to work hydrated. Come to work with sufficient fluid intake to be prepared for that 7:30 fire, for that 7:30 extended extrication. Your hydration and your preparation for your shift, your standby, or your duty night starts hours before you actually walk into the station. So please, everyone take that guidance and that suggestion. Come to work pre-hydrated, come to work drinking the right liquids, water, some electrolytes as well to support your continued operation throughout this high heat levels. Not related to that topic, but clearly a point that is involved in EMS as well as rehab from fire incidents. This month's video guest is Captain Bill Phelps from EMS 703. Bill, thank you and welcome.
Good morning, Chief. Thank you for having me.
So you've been on the list for a couple months now to come. You had some time to ask questions of fellow EMS supervisors and Chiefs Reed and Bush. So you have a couple topics, and one of them that we talked about it before sitting here in the studio was our high performance CPR rates. Pretty impressive. So where are we at recently?
Well, in the month of June, we had 60% ROSC rate, which means obviously we saved 60% of the people, which I think that number was like 12 or 13 people that we got a ROSC out of it. And it is directly related to our folks with the high performance CPR, meaning recognized cardiac arrest, starting good high quality compressions at a rate of 100 or plus a minute.
There's no doubt that the pit crew approach to high performance CPR, the uninterrupted compressions for medication administration or other adjuncts is critical to that compression rate. And as you say, and it's amazing to hear a 60% ROS or return of spontaneous circulation figure. That means that EADs in the community are potentially making an impact. We know they make an impact, but early CPR, high performance CPR is key and paramount to those resuscitation capabilities.
Yes, sir. Don't forget about the Lucas devices also. They are a lifesaver.
I go into stations and I see the tag on the board, the 5th firefighter Lucas, and I do chuckle because absolutely everybody wants the Lucas. We want to finish the few stations, the few places where we don't have a Lucas device. Chief Jones last year, so earlier in 2016, instructed EMS to fill those gaps and to take care of that because the Lucas device has been a key component for keeping that rhythm up, keeping that ability for HP CPR. Clearly it allows us to enhance our skills on that. So we will be getting more firefighter Lucases and getting those on all of the places that need them. And I advocate exactly that it's an important part. Now, high performance CPR is a small perspective, our 9 echoes that we have to deal with. Every time we go on a call, every time we do a patient interaction, our folks are dealing with our EPCRs or our electronic tablets.
Yes, sir.
There's a few key points that you wanted to pass on about EPCRs. What can you say for that?
Yes, sir. So the EPCRs, they make the provider's day and life a lot easier day to day. It needs to be turned off, restarted, and resynced at the beginning of every shift. And that's on every transport unit, AFRA, squad, engine, truck, anything that has an EPCR. It allows all the important updates from image trend that have been sent out during the day to be uploaded and makes for a smoother process. That's a living, breathing, everyday type of program that we're continuously updating. Chief Bush is in constant contact with them, and they send out updates. And without the resyncing and restarting of that, you don't get all the critical updates that you need.
And the analogy is to Windows or to Apple. Every time you restart those machines, and by county policy, most machines are forced to restart every day as a protocol. That drives the ability to get those patches and those updates. And the same holds true. We can't set that an EPCR will reboot at 9 p.m. like we do with our DTS machines.
Right.
But it is very important that at the beginning of the shift, the folks log on as to who the provider is after rebooting and letting that system resync so that it's up to date.
Yes, sir.
And there may be a new feature that's pushed out with that update, which only benefits our personnel because it makes a step easier or makes it so that the data capture is more fluid and effective. So definitely a part of our electronic platform and patient care and patient recordation. One of the things that we do see, and I'm sure it's one of the questions you get a lot, is hospital statuses, color-coded as well as what happens when I'm sitting there for 40 minutes and I'm the third cot with a patient sitting at a certain facility. What's the guidance on when they should contact a EMS supervisor, and what is the reference tools that all of our folks have access to for the color codes?
So after 20 minutes, they should give one of the EMS duty officers a call. We can call the hospital if we're in the area, we'll stop by. We can generally get the ball rolling pretty quick to get them a bed, get them a cot so they can get back in service for their next run. The tool that's on everybody's MDCs is chats, and that is the MIMS colors, if you want to call it, alert statuses. The most what we run into is red and yellow, and let me explain a little bit about both of them. The yellow means that the hospital is currently very, very busy, a little bit overloaded, that they can't accept patients and process them through pretty timely manner because they're so busy. Red, which gets people confused, is there is no beds, monitored beds to admit to. Has really nothing to do with the ER per se. It will down the road if you know you have to admit a patient to the hospital. So you hear all the time the hospitals say, we're on red or yellow, follow your protocols. The alert status is a courtesy to let the providers know what the hospital is experiencing right now. So we try to, if we can, we kind of divert and go to a different hospital. Red, if the patient's going to be admitted, and we know sometimes if they're going to be admitted, we try to divert to a different hospital. Sometimes it's just not convenient because of the location of where you're at. But you can find all that information on your MDCs, and it'll save a lot of radio time. And back to the calling EMS duty officer, if you've been at the hospital a while, our presence with our rapport with the staff at the hospitals, when we walk in, they've known that we've got a phone call. They're usually pretty quick about moving some people around. Sometimes we are maintaining our patients on the cots, and they say, okay, these guys have got it, and we walk in, they're like, oh, let's get them moving, and we'll keep units in service. That's the biggest thing.
So 20 minutes sitting without transfer to the ER staff.
Yes, sir.
Is the benchmark to contact EMS supervisor on alternate channel or on a cell phone, advising which facility, which unit, and if there's more than one field unit in that queue, so that you all can support that.
Yes, sir.
And we clearly know that's time of the year, flu season as an example, or other things that truly cause spikes in EMS or hospital admissions or hospital visitations. We've talked about it here before. We're still pushing along to move towards the alternative destination activities. We would love to be able to take the low acuity priority 3 patients that are appropriate to go to urgent cares or to Kaiser CDU when they're in the Gaithersburg, Germantown area for those subscribers. So there's a lot of work at hand to try to reduce the load to the actual ERs. So good points for all of our folks to remember about. As always, I say for my guests to bring questions. I'm gonna ask you for one of your questions, but as I alluded to at the beginning, it's hazy, hot, and humid.
Yes, sir.
And I want to drill into a couple other things, but let me get to your question first.
I know it's on everybody's mind. The ALS Chase Car Implementation. When do you see that? I guess your thoughts on how that study went and things like that.
So it's actually a pretty long time ago. It was in the spring of 14 that we did the study. We did the pilot test. The results of that show and gave us validation that the ALS Chase platform or paramedic chase unit was effective in the denser components in the denser areas, the 355 corridor, the Georgia corridor, and the Route 29 corridor for the ALS service. That's supplementary to paramedic engine companies at every firehouse. As we see on this one map, we see that there's today 6 stations that don't have a paramedic. Stations 2, 5, 10, 11, 20, and 26. Station 5 we fixed with a modification at Wheaton. So, but we still have a hole. And in this map shows we have a big hole in the 2nd Battalion, the west side. 26, 10, and 11, as I refer to that as a comma, there's a large gap there of A, no capability to meet our 8-minute goal, and B, as we did during the test, there's a hot spot or high frequency occurrence along that 26 Westlake Democracy area that is of prime concern. That's why Chief Jones has worked with the folks at Bethesda, and we're going to implement Paramedic Engine 726 the beginning of August timeframe. So we got funding for a first phase of the paramedic adjustment. And I use the word phase. Right now we have 17 transport medic units. We're looking at reducing those 17 transport medic units, reducing it and making 15 of them BLS transport units and redistributing those paramedics. That's about a 66-person endeavor, meaning taking 15 medics off of a cot every day and putting 15 EMTBs on the cot, keeping our cot level to the same number, redeploying those paramedics to those AFRAs at the stations that don't have them, or to about roughly 8 chase cars. So we've did some planning, a 2-year or 3-year or 4-year plan. We have funded the FY17 budget was supported by the executive and the council to fund phase 1 of a 3-year plan. And as this graphic shows, that 3-year plan talks about 16 personnel in the first year, which is what we have funding for now, 25 positions in the 2nd year, 25 positions in the 3rd year, getting to about that 66 position count. It's about a 5.3 million for people and about another million for the equipment, chase cars, some additional ALS equipment and the such. So we're doing 26, like I said, within about 4 weeks now, within about a month. Station 10 and 11 will come around the horn as AFRAs in the May timeframe, which will bring the chase car in at Rescue 1 in the May timeframe. Wheaton's already been at a chase car now for several months. Rockville's chase car, Rockville bought a chase car with city funds, and they will be implementing a chase car here in the near future at nights and weekends when we can ensure that we have 2 transport cots out of Station 3. We will see more chase cars coming. My first priority of the ALS redeployment was fixing that comma in the 2nd Battalion. And as this map shows, when we fill in 26, 10, and 11, which is the ones that we're funded for with FY17, we filled in that gap. What used to be clear now is all green. And stations 5, 20, and 2, as an example, they're already sufficiently covered by surrounding stations to hit the 8-minute goal. And expanding that 2nd Battalion gap even further supports Station 20 as an example and Station 5. So I'm going to submit a request for Phase 2, and Phase 2 is re-implementing or returning the chase cars to Gaithersburg, Aspen Hill, and Station 3, Rockville. So with hope and support of the executive and the council, with the FY18 budget, I'd like to see chase cars funded in FY18, and I'd like to see the implementation of that sometime through FY18. Again, that's about 25 people needed to make that happen. Then Phase 3, as this chart shows, brings chase cars into Silver Spring, Twin Brook, Burtonsville, and does the last conversion of the last medics on cots to BLS units. I would be optimistic to say I'd like to see Phase 2 and 3 in FY18. Again, that's almost $3.5 million in upon itself, and 50 new positions. That's ambitious, but maybe it can be supported through the executive and legislative process. So we see chase cars already. We're going to see one more this year, and when we talk years, we talk physical years. But clearly, as we get more support with the FY18 budget, we'll get more chase cars, or bring back the chase cars we tested. So can't say more emphatically I want them to come back. The test proved that taking that medic off the cot improved our ALS availability and reliability, and provided the necessary support in the community to ensure the ALS provider got there in a timely fashion. So really looking forward to implementing Phase 2 with the support, and maybe Phase 3 at the same time. So obviously I kicked this off by saying it's hot. A couple weeks ago we put out a new Fire Chief's General Order. How's it been recepted, or how's it been received in the field?
Fairly decent. People don't understand, I guess, the exact reasoning behind it, I guess, if that's a good term.
Okay.
Long sleeves and 95 masks. It's 100 degrees outside. They're overhauled. They're used to doing things the old way. Maybe you can expand a little bit.
Right. So we issued Fire Chief's General Order 1411 a little bit ago now, about 2 years ago. I don't believe anybody doubts the basis that the safest position for our folks to be in is by breathing air out of an SCBA tank when we're in the fire environment, the post-fire environment, the fire overhaul environment. We don't know what we're being exposed to. As I say, the vogue gas of the day was CO, and then that was replaced with hydrogen cyanide. That was the new thing. That was the bad gas of the day. I believe the bad gas of the days in the Bs now is the bromines and the bromides or the benzenes that are off-gassing. But there'll be something else in 6 months. There'll be something else in 12 months that it's already there today. It'll just be more understood what it is and what's the impact to you and I. The cancer rates in firefighters are crazy. We know that for a fact. So the best thing is full SCBA, full air the entire time we're in a post-fire environment. But there's a huge trade-off that we're dealing with. When we're at that hazy, hot, and humid level, when we're there, we are trading off the short-term impacts versus the long-term impacts. The short-term impact is that respiratory, the long-term impact is the respiratory and downrange, the exposures we will receive from gases and the toxic fumes. The short-term impact when it's hot is the heat stress on the body. The firefighters who have that heat stress, wearing that SCBA and that coat as an example for another hour throughout rotated overhaul is something that we're greatly concerned about. And since 1411 came out, we've been working on revising and making a mitigated risk followed by dealing with the safety factors. So FCGO 16.7 came out, and it preceding that GO was a lot of training to chief officers, to hazmat officers, and to safety officers. We always will be faced with particulate in the air in a post-overhaul environment. One of the greatest particulates that we're dealing with is asbestos. Drywall and other components, insulation, we know it's there. We can't say that just because there's no smoke, there's no particulate in the air, because the facts are it's just clearly there. So that's the transition to the N95 mask. The N95 mask is going to vastly attack and protect the folks from those level of small particulate. So that's why we've transitioned from SCBA to the N95 mask. There's obviously some benchmarks that GO says. It has to be above that 80% and 80 degree heat index or heat humidity level for us to take this balanced risk. There has to be no more smoke being generated. There's alarm levels set in the policy or in the GO about what the metering is, and we've added meters to the battalion and the safety car to be able to better meter what we know we are experiencing, and to also meter what we don't know, because we're cognitive that we know there's stuff there that we don't know what it is. So when there's no smoke being produced, when we have metered and it's within our reasonable ranges of the metering as the safety section has outlined, and there's fans going. Fans going is another key point to this equation. Fans going keeps the air moving and gives us an exchange rate of fresh air and whatever the byproducts that may still be there. When those things are in place, yes, we feel that the risk that we're taking is lessened by dropping the turnout coat, dropping the SCBA, moving to the N95 mask to support operations and overhaul. Anybody at any time can choose to go back up to the SCBA. The GO says you can wear an SCBA without your turnout coat. The question comes, well, why, Chief, the long sleeve? What are we in a post-fire environment? Abrasion, pokey things, all kinds of activities there. So that's the long sleeve factor. We can put on a long sleeve shirt. We have a go bag or a ditty bag on the fire truck when it's cold out to get dressed into warm clothes. Today, I hope that somebody's carrying a ditty bag with a long sleeve t-shirt. And when they go to that fire, they could put on that long sleeve t-shirt over their pre-existing shirt, put on their N95 mask and eye protection and helmets and gloves, and go back in that environment. It's an abrasion protection as well as a basic level of absorption protection to the arms. That's the long sleeve t-shirt perspective. Tied to that fire chief's general order is that wiping, cleaning, the post-overhaul exposure to the carcinogens and the bad stuff in our gear. When you get to rehab, you darn well better have already taken off your coat, taken off your exposed and cruddy firefighting stuff. Before you start to grab for that bottle of water, grab that wipe. Grab that wipe, follow the instructions, the examples in that video of how to take and clean off, especially around the neck and the ears, one of our most vulnerable areas of what was protection, or the lowest level of protection we do have because of our hoods. Wipe that off. Wipe off your arms. Wipe off the private parts, as that video talks about. Because it's important that as quick as we can to get off the soot, the products of combustion. As soon as we get back to the firehouse, get showered, get out of those clothes as quickly as possible. For those that have a second set of gear, have that readily available, because when you run that fire, you want to get in that second set of gear. But obviously at the fire ground, make sure you've done a gross decon of that gear. Knock off that big stuff. Use a trash line or another small line to rinse off the gear to knock off that big stuff. When possible, clearly don't sit with your funky turnout gear. Don't put your funky turnout gear on the seats of the apparatus. We did some testing. We took funky turnout gear, put it in the cab of an engine company with the doors closed and the windows closed. And the Canary CO monitor the single source CO monitor on the first aid kits was going off inside the engine with the funky turnout gear in the firehouse.
Wow.
Tells us that the ventilation keeps all of what our gears was still producing inside that engine company. We followed that up with some more complicated or sophisticated meters, and that's the point why we say, go back with the windows down, don't put your funky turnout gear on your seat anywhere that you're going to also touch in the cab of the apparatus, try to put it in a different compartment, a bunch of things. And we reacted to, I will say, decades ago, no turnout pants in the bunk room, no turnout pants in the firehouse. This is just a continuation of that. We know more, we're understanding more about what we're being exposed to. And Fire Chief's Order 16.7 balances that risk. I would still prefer SCBA, but the heat stress issues when it's hazy, hot, and humid outside are the short-term issues we got to deal with. And that's why we're balancing that. So it's a great question. I know our folks are trying to understand it, and it's intended to help you all and everybody within the department, and while reducing some risk, mitigating the other risk and approaching it from those perspectives. So great question.
That's something that we as the EMS duty officers, when we arrive to help with the rehab area, we can ensure that people are making sure that they're staying clean, wiping their hands off, that they are gross decon, and that's all part of our what we oversee. Usually, an ambulance or a medic unit is doing all the vitals and stuff, and we're trying to look at the bigger picture, as you just alluded to.
And we've had discussions with the Canteens. We've talked to the Canteens about part of this and how they play a role in this part as well. I'll use some very specific examples. They got to carry the wipes. They're carrying the wipes. They have to carry hand cleaner as well. We're not going to see ice chests with bottles of water floating in them, because as soon as one person who hasn't cleaned dips his or her hand in that bottle of water, or so that ice chest, now the crud on their hand has now gotten all the water in there. So you're going to see bottles of water on tables, so that they're cold. They may have just come out of the ice cooler by one of the canteen staff, but you grab a bottle, you're only grabbing your bottle. You're not contaminating the rest of that cooler environment. As well as, I really want to see some changes in what we use at rehab. People may look at chocolate milk and think that's a kid's activity and a kid's drink, and really chastise our kids for taking chocolate milk versus white milk. But there's a value and a huge benefit post a fire environment with chocolate milk, as well as a baby aspirin or almost a Tums as well. So definitely some work on the front with the Canteens to provide the tools to make it a better environment in the rehab world. So thank you for the question, and as hopefully this helps our folks understand why 16.7 came out and what the importance is to it, and why we asked for some of those changes.
Yes, sir.
As I said, I deviated from 2 questions from the field and as such. There's been a lot going on, I'll say, in the country. There's been a lot going on in local communities in the last year. We've seen the protest in Baltimore after the death of Freddie Gray. We've seen the events in Orlando last month at the Pulse nightclub. We've seen the events just this month in Louisiana, Minnesota, Dallas most recently on just less than a week ago. All of these events are making us as organizations, us as public safety folks, think about and reflect about what's going on. And those are impacting our personal and professional feelings and how we go about doing our daily work. Clearly, it's something that I know each of the members of our department is thinking about. Each of the law enforcement members of Montgomery County Police and any law enforcement is constantly thinking about. One of the things that is paramount when we come to work, when we come to our standby, is that we are operating within the accordance or following the community's expectations. The expectations of Mr. Leggett, the county executive. When we're at work, we have to adhere to those community expectations. And clearly that is to provide fair inequitable interactions in services, blind to race, gender, political beliefs, social beliefs, or social standings. Our job is to treat everyone the same. Our job is to provide an equal amount of service no matter who it is that's asking for that service or who we're treating. And that's the expectations of the community, and that's my expectations as a chief, and I'm assured that I believe that's everybody else's expectations and understandings. That may mean that some of us have to check their feelings, or some of the personnel have to check their feelings, their beliefs, their personal beliefs in the car when they get to work. Because when we're at work, we're held to the community's expectations and those of our leadership in county government. And that's an expectation, and that's what we have to do. I've sat here before with Dre Richards, talked about social media. I talked about how what someone says in social media while they're off duty, while they're not in the station, as an example, does have a tie to MCFRS based upon how they are established in social media as their profile. It's very important that people understand that what would be inappropriate language, what would be inappropriate statements or actions in a firehouse would be clearly addressed by the code of conduct. Maybe disparaging or intolerance for a certain group or individuals or organizations. Saying that on social media when you're affiliated with MCFRS is also inappropriate and is a core issue that people need to understand, that if there's a tie to your profile or a tie to your account to you as a member of our organization, MCFRS, the same baselines apply of what's expected of your actions. These difficult times require us to have a myriad of skills. One of them is compassion. One of them is kindness. One of them is understanding. One of them is on thoughtfulness and the ability to unite together. We are a broad group, almost 3,000, a little over 3,500 folks, including administrative staff, as part of MCFRS, and we're all different. Every one of us is different, but we all have to unite together as a service delivery point to provide that to the men and women of the community and the residents. Everyone within our organization is a leader. You may be the leader of the ambulance. You may be the leader of the crew. You may be a shift officer. You may be a certified chief officer or higher. But at the same time, you also may be a leader of a social group, of Boy Scouts or a soccer coach. You may be a parent. You probably are a sibling. You know, you're a son and daughter of within your family. You may be a parent as well. Everyone needs to acknowledge that their role within the community as a leader, and everyone needs to understand that my job and our job at work is to support Mr. Leggett's expectations. And he has a base set of expectations, and two of them are really clear that tie into this. A responsive and accountable government, and safe and secure communities. And it's very important that we take a second, we talk about the fact that what have impacted some other community is on the minds of the folks within our community. While we're the fire department, we may be perceived as the police department or law enforcement by some of the citizens that we interface with. Our uniforms, the way we come to scenes, and how we collectively, and we pride ourselves in this, how we collectively are pretty joint with our law enforcement partners within this county. So we have to understand that while we're not the law enforcement, we may not have any affiliation with law enforcement. The community may perceive us to be part of law enforcement, and I don't want to use those statements to scare, the folks that are listening to this, to scare the men and women of MCFRS. I want them to understand that we as public safety, we as part of Montgomery County government, the LFRDs, the career to volunteers, the administrative staff of our organization, we have a role in being united, unified, and supporting the community. There will be more events. as we talk about terror, as we talk about the attacks that happened overseas and Istanbul airport, probably most recently, that will come back to the United States. It will be here upon us. There will be an event. As I said before, treat them as an MCI, deal with the event based upon the core building blocks that the event is, and we can get through the event. It'll be a traumatic event. It'll be something that shakes us as an organization and shakes the community that we're a part of. But you have to deal with it each step at a time. So I wanted to deviate a little bit from the normal question component and take this opportunity to highlight where we stand as an organization and for people to hear from me, about our role within the community. So I'll get to those other questions you had. We talked offline about the other two questions that you had wanted to ask of me, and I'll hit one of them next time.
Yes, sir.
And such. So next time I have Bill Velopoulos. He's retired DC Deputy Chief. He's been our accreditation manager. He will be joining me to talk about accreditation. Explain to you, the men and women of MCFRS, what accreditation does, why you may hear from him, or what we're doing as we go through, and the values and benefits of being an accredited organization as a fire department. So again, it's July, it's hot out there, there's no doubt. Be ready for your shift, be ready for your call, and take care. Till next month.